Hi, I'm Kerrie Penney. On this episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting, Tropical Bird in a Snowstorm with Nina Sudra. Nina's a filmmaker, a friend, a bright light. She also comes from a traditional Indian culture, yet grew up kind of footloose and fancy-free on the prairies. So we'll find out about love for your family, love for your ancestors, love for yourself. We'll also talk about books, filmmaking, and a whole lot more with Nina Sudra on Tropical Bird in a Snowstorm, coming up next on Secret Heart Broadcasting. Welcome to Secret Heart Broadcasting. I'm Kerrie Penney, and today I'm speaking with the fabulous Sonal Nina Sudra. Nina is a writer, director, producer, filmmaker, mom, friend, wife. She's really the whole human creative package. And we first met years ago when she was a college practicum student at the production company that I was then contracting with. This is a few years ago. And I remember when I first saw Nina, I was heading into the edit suite. And Nina, you were shadowing our friend, the editor and indie film darling, Jason Hohen, who sadly is not with us anymore. And I could tell by looking at Jason that he was just mesmerized by you and your energy. And I remember you then as having this kind of like super sparkle about you when people, at that time were not really enthusiastic. It was a workplace and you just were curious. You were eager to get going on your career. You were sure you wanted to make films. And it was just a delight to meet you. I think right away we had this like connection. How do you remember it? And I couldn't even tell you what project, because I think after that, I needed a production assistant. I was like, who is that? I'm hiring her. And so our story begins. Anyway, I don't know how you remember it, but that's how I remember our meeting.
I think, thank you for that intro. That was
You're
super
so welcome.
You know what? I think that it's kind of a love story, Kerrie.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. Like, because I remember, I totally remember, and I was like, whoa, she is so cool. I remember your crushed velvet bells. Yeah, like these.
Oh, yeah. The bell-bottom pants.
I was like, she's awesome. And I think that what happened was we ended up, you guys were able to get me out of my final exams.
Mm-hmm.
College.
Yeah, we had read a letter saying Nina will be gainfully employed.
Yes, and we need her. So so needed.
Mm-hmm.
But that was such a magical time. And I totally remember, I just remember, I felt like there was this instant, this sort of instant connection that we had.
Yeah, I agree. And at that time, which this would be the 90s, I think, there weren't a lot of women in kind of, commercial production, video production, film production roles. And yeah, so that was a nice connection. And then just the kind of energy and the youthfulness of you was such a bonus. The idea to see things a different way. Let's try do something a different way. Let's, it just kind of opened up the possibility of, there can be a different way of thinking now. We could try this. Let's use, I don't know, I can't even think of an example. Let's try natural light.
Natural light. That's so, it's so funny, right? Because I never, when you're in it, I never really saw it that way, or I didn't see myself the way that you're describing it. I totally was, I guess, because when you're in it, right, you're like,
yeah.
I do remember being super excited to be in the world, like just the world, and being able to like, yay, and meeting all these really funky, cool people that are outside of the box, and everyone was so welcoming and like kind and fun. And I don't know, I think it was a time when it felt like, that those times in your life when you just feel like every door is open, like you could walk through anything, and like and you're young and you're just like, yay, look what's gonna happen.
Excited. And that was really the beginning of your career. I mean, now looking back, you've done a number of independent films, you've produced, directed. I mean, that was the beginning of it all.
That was, and it was amazing. It was incredible. Like, and Kerrie, I totally think of you as my mentor. Like stuff I learned from you was I, to this day, totally use all of those skills and tools. And I remember your whole thing around like the magic of interview and what goes on, and just this like sort of this alchemy that you end up like. I would watch you doing this, and it would be, we'd be doing corporate videos or like making things for, sometimes they were really intense, right? Like I think we did whole homes. Do you
Yeah, we
remember?
did. Yeah, I do.
And that was like intense. And
Hmm.
I just remember watching, just observing you direct, and the interviews that you were doing were magic, because suddenly everything disappeared and it's just you and the person that you're talking to, and
Yeah.
just creating that safe environment, that safe space. And I like that has been a pillar for me in all the stuff that I do now. So
Well, that's lovely to hear. And that was kind of like the impetus of Secret Heart Broadcasting for me. Now, albeit we are out of the studio, so the in studio series, season one, is done. We're doing this kind of digital nomady interaction. So I'm really missing the energy of having the person in the space with me. But as my daughter would say, like, let's try something new. So here we are trying to create that magic on a digital platform. And I'm so excited that you said yes. I just wanted to go back to, as you were talking, I was thinking about that time when we met and we, signed the letter and got you out of college and you were gainfully employed. And then realizing, I mean, I didn't know very much about you, but I know one of the concerns, you were still living at home and your parents, who were quite conservative, I think your mom was like, Who is this woman you're working with? And what do you mean you're going on the road?" And a door opened, and I had just never thought about, wow, Nina's come from this background where there are some very specific ways in which a young woman is in the world, and being an independent filmmaker was maybe not one of them. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
yeah, totally. Yeah. Oh man. Okay, yeah, this goes back. It's a big can of worms. But
Can't
just
open worms everywhere.
open that huge can of worms. I
Yes.
just wanted to say that, yeah, Kerrie, I mean, I've watched, all the podcasts from last season, and
Mm.
just to say it is really, it's a new shift, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
let's just like, maybe there's like sort of a feeling into the space and feeling into each other's, where we are, even though we're not in the same physical space, we could still be in the same energetic space.
Yeah, we'll be energetic pioneers in film and video.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
On the web. Okay.
In the Matrix.
In the matrix. Um, yeah, so I think that probably part of the reason why I was so ecstatic and excited is because I was in a space and time where I could start to really design my life. So my family was incredibly conservative, really strict.
Mhm.
Um, I come from, should I go all the way? Should I start from the beginning?
As far back as you wanna go.
Oh, well, and about, 20 million years ago. No. Um, uh, in this lifetime, I was born to two beautiful, wonderful human beings
Mhm.
that had quite the journeys themselves. So I'll go back to my grandparents. So my grandparents on both sides were all born in India, in Gujarat, where Gandhi's from.
Mhm.
And during that time, there was like the empire was happening. So the British were, were colonized, or India was colonized by the British, and also, the East Africa also was fully colonized by the British. So they needed people to work in East Africa, and a lot of folks from the part of India that I'm from were being offered opportunity to go to to East Africa. So my grandparents, both sides, there's kind of a mass of South Asians that basically migrated to East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda in particular. My grandparents were part of that migration. And so they had my parents in different countries. So my mom's from Kenya, my dad was born in Uganda. They grew up in these South Asian enclaves. And they were, it was a beautiful mix of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, all living, all living together and actually living harmoniously and beautifully together. Like they're still very close family friends from all of those different different religious backgrounds. My parents were raised there. It was like paradise. It was magical. They had a great time. They got engaged. And then what happened was Idi Amin,
Mm.
the Idi Amin thing happened. So he was this crazy dictator that basically took over, did a coup d'etat in Uganda, and had said, if you are South Asian, you need to get out of the country in a particular amount of days. And if you don't, you will be.
And this was
So
in the 70s, right?
this was in the 70s. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like 1972.
Yep.
So my dad, and he was the eldest in the family. He got pretty much the whole family out. They all went to most of them actually were able to go to England because they carried British passports as well.
Mhm.
But my dad didn't have a British passport, and he had to rip up all of his statements, and so he had to become stateless. And then he basically has this dramatic story in his life of machine gun pointed to his head.
Mm.
Do you get on the UN plane, or what do you do? So he got on a United Nations plane that took him to Canada. And he saved up money. My mom came over. They got married in a basement in Calgary,
Wow.
which is quite the story. And the way that my parents were brought up was kind of like in a frozen time warp. So they were being raised by my grandparents, who had been basically taken or were left India, this village kind of mentality in the turn of the century. So late 1900s, village India mentality to East Africa. And then my parents were brought up in that very similar conservative way. And then life gets flipped upside down. They end up in Canada. And then a few years later,
A free spirit is born.
yes, yes,
Mm.
magic has entered the earth. No, I'm joking. But I was born in Calgary, and that's kind of how my journey began. And so
Mhm.
anyway, my upbringing was this like turn of the century, late 1900s village mentality, growing up in this very foreign, very strange country where my mom in particular did not have very much support. She didn't have her family here. Her mom wasn't here. Everyone was in England or in Kenya.
Mhm.
So so her story is really interesting, and I think the more and more, the older I got, the more I was able to understand that. So anyway, growing up was really tricky. It was balancing two cultures and being one thing at home and another thing when I walked out the door, and who am I, and fitting in here but not really fitting in there, and feeling just, I felt very torn a lot, but
Mhm.
also just found a way to be like, oh, I guess this is, kind of I think I was kind of a strange, eccentric, super fun and awesome kid.
And having to adapt, right? And especially I think about the teenage years when, as much as we might want to think of ourselves as rebels, really, teenagers are programmed to fit in, find a tribe and fit in. Like, you don't want to stand out. And maybe I'm superimposing my experience of being a teenager. I'm that much older than you. But I just think about, people are like, oh, I would love to be young again. You could not pay me enough money to go back to high school, because I think it was just so much, the stakes about belonging were so high. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, I don't know.
yeah,
Did you feel that?
I totally felt that. I totally felt that. But I also felt like I think that I realized at a really young age that I'm not gonna get that. Like, I'm probably not gonna fit in. I really tried hard, and when I tried super, super hard, it was so, so unauthentic to who I was,
Hmm. Mhm.
like, it was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna try to be like, like everybody else," and it was, like, soul crushing, so I was just like, "You know what? I'm I just have to embrace this kind of whatever this is." And, I was really lucky. I had some amazing I think I did meet really some amazing souls along the way, and, but I yeah, I think that it's really hard. And, the other thing is that culturally, you're like you saw on TV, like, everyone all your on those TV shows, like, you've got, like, the kids who all have that little group, that little, like,
Mhm.
the little clique, and I'm like, I don't I don't have a clique. I don't have a little group. I kinda
Mhm.
but then the other thing was I kind of really liked hanging out with everyone. Like, I liked sampling all of the different cool folks out there. I think that,
Yeah.
you know
And I love when you talked about, you were sort of almost forced to be authentic. Like, it was you. You had to, being not you was not working. So you learned early on that you just had to be yourself in the world, which some people take, that sometimes that never happens. So and that's one thing I love and admire about you. You are completely who you are in the world. And I love
Oh,
that.
thank you, but
You're
it
welcome.
can be brutal and painful and hard. And,
Oh, yeah.
I got this story. I wanna share this story. This is an interesting story from I was in grade, I think I was in grade 6. Okay, so I was, like, pretty, like, woo, like, happy-go-lucky, sang a lot.
Mhm.
Um just kind of like especially at school, because at home I don't know, I felt like I had to sort of shift a bit at home. So at school, I was like, "Woohoo!" And there was this point when the girls in the school, the girls in my class, they decided to do an intervention. I know, this is such a true story. So so they all surround me. I mean, you could not seriously, you couldn't write this. You wouldn't believe it. And I'm in this sort of huddled circle, and I'm in the middle, and they're like, "We want you to," like, they're like, "Look, we really care about you, and we just feel like you really need to start acting like yourself. Like, stop trying to be something you're not." And I think it was because I can be, or maybe, I don't know, back then I was very performative,
Mhm.
and I was like, I felt like I always liked making people laugh, and, so I was really super performative.
Mhm.
And maybe it kinda made, like, it's probably over the top. Okay, looking back at it, it's probably really over
Hindsight, grade 6, Calgary.
6, Calgary, like, Indian girl who, is in we also went to Catholic school. So, like, I was born as a Hindu. That's kind of my lens, is like a Hindu lens, and then I went to a Catholic school from kindergarten to grade 9. So, like, there's gonna be some stuff, but, it was so funny, and I just was like, "Okay, you're right, you're right, you're right. I'm gonna try to be more normal." Normal being, like, more serious, more, like, subdued, calmer, like the way an adult would be. Boring. So boring. I tried really hard to be like that, but it felt so it was so depressing, and I was like, "What's wrong with me? Is something wrong with me?" And I was like, "Ah, screw this," and it lasted for maybe a few days, and
Mm.
no, sorry, I guess I'm just nuts.
Well, and we're hearing so much about that now in, a lot of kind of, I wanna say self-help literature, but, when you there's an uncomfortableness in being yourself fully authentically in the world. It can make people want you to, take down those edges. I mean, good Lord, 100 years ago, you might have been diagnosed with hysteria, and there's wow, all kinds of ways to take the shine off of,
Oh my God, totally.
life. And yeah, and you would have none of it, which made you, I think, quite creative. Therein lies the recipe. I mean, maybe things happen for a reason. I don't know. We can talk about that, but you could, of course you're going to be creative. Of course you're going to make things. How could you not?
I guess it's kind of like, I mean, I think that, the cool thing about you and I is that I think we have sort of similar, despite our very different backgrounds,
Mhm.
we share like similar human paths, in terms of like feeling completely sort of a bit like alienated or like, oh, all of that. And I
Or
think
just
that
feeling, the feeling piece. Like, we're real feelers in a world that's like, "Oh, we are human beings, not human," anyway.
it down.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And feeling, I mean, I guess that's kind of maybe also one of the things that you and I probably not even really, we may have not known it in the moment when we met, but it sort of started to slowly start to evolve and come out as we became more and more, like just, it's like, oh, wait, like you get the energy thing?
Mhm.
Awesome. That,
Yeah.
you walk into a room and, or you, whatever, you feel things, we feel, and it is hard. Like, I think that when you feel things really deeply, you're tapping into the beauty and the wonderful things, and that's really where you want to be. But
Mhm.
it can be so hard when you're like feeling depleted, and I've found as I've gotten older, it's all of that's become harder and harder and harder. And I gotta know, this whole perimenopausal thing is like, dude, it's that spark. It's like, where did that person go? I knew that person. Where did she go? Where is she? I'm trying to, bit by bit find her again. But
Well, I hadn't planned to talk about this, but I think you stumbled upon, and what a coincidence, of course, because 'cause we're talking. But the paths, or the way women's lives change, and it's not really been documented. I mean, Gail Sheehy had a fantastic book, and I guess, Betty Friedan. But in terms of okay, so, we were that person then, and, we were the maiden, we are the mother, we're moving into the role of elder. I use the word crone. I know that's not everyone's word. But as we move along that path as an aware and sensitive human being, there is a mourning for what is lost as we decide what we're going to take with us on the road to elder. And maybe that's,
mm,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
maybe that's part of, yeah, that perimenopause journey. Yeah,
wow,
which is really a woman's life journey.
that
Should we
hit.
be lucky enough to live this old, right? Live to be
It's
this
true.
old.
I mean,
Yeah.
not, yeah, and oh my gosh, that hits home so much with what you just said, because I think that actually the first time I really felt it is when I found out I was pregnant
Hmm.
with Nahani. So it's, I don't know, I'm just weaving my little story and throughout this, but like
Along this path.
along this path. So like, I definitely would love to share like the whole, but what I remember when I found out I was I was going to be a mother, it was like this kind of crisis. I feel it's a weird one because on one hand I feel like, oh my gosh, how could you be so selfish? Because there's so many women that want to have children and dream of that. But I was like at the peak of, just starting this film career and, like becoming nationally sort of starting to get like some being seen
Mhm.
and kind of being recognized as a director and not just an assistant or whatever. And like the opportunity to get to tell my stories. And wow, my voice is going to be heard. I'm going to be
Mhm.
able to share this. And then suddenly it's like, and you're pregnant. And I just remember being like, and I had like two documentaries that were on the go at the time. Like all these things were happening. And I remember talking to a producer she's an amazing producer, Bonnie Thompson from the National Film Board Canada.
Mhm.
She's like, she's just lovely. And I told her, I was like, she was the first person in the industry I told. And I remember just like starting to cry. And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she's just like, that is so wonderful. Like, don't worry about your career. Your career will come. But like, and she just gave me this sort of these amazing words of wisdom and just comfort that like your life is going to change. And as a woman, you are going, and she's, you know, she's older than you or I, right? I'm like, she's kind of like, she's also a mentor, I would say,
Mhm.
and it was like this mentor of, what does that look like? What do those phases look like? And I really went through a mourning of like mourning that young, sparkly, yay, no responsibility. Suddenly I was like, shit, man, now shit. Can I swear?
You can.
Sorry. But this is where shit gets real, right? Like once
Mm.
and I know enough about healing that like I can't I can't sit around and pretend that nothing's happened in my life. Like I better start healing my stuff because I don't want to pass this stuff down to my
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
So party's over, baby. Like time, you know. So it was and so I can really see what you're saying when you say like now once you enter into like another phase, right? This like elder phase, a phase of going into to like crone deliciousness.
Mhm.
we're yeah, we're starting to like it's like a mourning, a like letting go, but what can we keep? What are the sparkles that we get to keep?
Yeah, and the sparkle's important because I think that is the life force, right? That's a really interesting question. What do you wanna keep?
Oh man, you know what, Kerrie? It's total. You know when you were describing at the beginning, like this sparkly person. That was so.
Mhm.
I was,
17-year-old Nina.
yeah, totally like, whoa.
Yeah.
That there's this fearless, fun person that was just, I found, yeah, like magic everywhere,
Mhm.
and I think I still do. I still do, but I really have to make sure that I don't get too in here, in
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
it, it's like it's almost like a de-evolution in some ways as we grow older.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Where we
I do. Liz Soria, who was on season 1 of this show, taught has this theory she wanted to live this big wide circle while she could because recognizing having, cared for her elder parents, life gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And she wanted to give a big wide circle to her son, Pedro. So I think there's maybe some of that in when you use the term de-evolution. But I think it's also true that when you have children or a human that you love in your life, or maybe it's you, wouldn't that be great that you love in your life? You're not as willing to take risks. So there's a real, wisdom balancing there, not becoming too afraid where you can't leave the house, but also, I'm not going to, for me, go to the Caribbean and ride a motorcycle without a helmet and like whatever that, version of me was. Um, it doesn't feel right now. So I don't know, there's a kind of um, you really have to rely on your feelings about what is a risk worth taking and what just no longer fits.
Oh, totally. No, it's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
snowboarding, like I don't know. I just, I picked up snowboarding again when kids were learning to ski, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. And you have to have confidence when you're snowboarding. Like you got to take like it's okay, I'm gonna be fine. And
Mm,
I think that I've just the fear has stopped me from. I mean, I'm getting there. I'm getting better. Every year I get better. But
mhm,
I do know what you mean about like there are risks I will absolutely not take anymore that I would have had no problem doing when before kids, because
mhm.
you have these humans that you have to keep alive, and
Yeah.
you there for? I think another interesting thing that sort of I thought about just now when you were talking about loving your children. I think I really had a point in my life where I really love myself. But there's been I'm noticing, and I'm noticing just because I'm in this kind of transitionary phase right now, that maybe, you start loving the people around you so much that you sort of start to forget about like you. And
Mm.
if, like I feel like that sort of has been like, oh, well, like you're shifting. Who am I? And oh, am I like a and my kids are now they're older. Nahani, my son, he just turned 17. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm still trying to process this thing, but they're slowly becoming more and more independent. They're not gonna need me. And I
Mhm.
think that's where it's like, oh, wait a second, I better start to like model a behavior that's, you know, that demonstrates that, you know what, you need to care for it. And when I say loving yourself, it's not so much like, oh, I'm going to go and like get a bunch of manicures and pedicures. Like it's a deep,
Mhm.
like,
Love and accepting.
and loving, there's one thing about like loving Nina,
Well, who
but
couldn't?
oh God, no, 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 no. Like, but there's another thing about like, and then this comes back maybe to that Hindu lens that I have, where
Mm.
it's like Sonal Nina. I can share that whole Sonal Nina story, but where it's actually the higher self, like the soul of who I am, which is who I actually am. Like the I am is actually not an I am. It's like, Tattvam Asi, which is in Sanskrit, that means that I am. Tattvam Asi, that I am. So it's this idea of like, I'm in this body, I'm in this physical vessel, and I happen to be born to these parents, and I happen to have this story, and this whole thing has been created. And maybe it's a play, and maybe it's like I'm in this role, and there are things my soul needs to learn, or I need to learn.
Mhm.
And I've been blessed. I was thinking about this the other day. I've been so blessed. I'm so lucky that I had parents that loved me a lot. Like maybe like, a little over. um and and but wow, how beautiful things just unfolded, and look at where I am now, and to be grateful for all of that. But there are hard lessons, and one of those hard lessons is, guess what, you're wired in this way that happens to be extremely sensitive, or maybe you have a very refined system
Mhm.
where you can attune to multiple types of things going on in the liminal, the unseen, that not everyone can feel or see. And we live in a society that doesn't necessarily value that, right? It values like progress, and values the material, like here's the evidence, here's the proof. And these are things that, would burn people at the stake, right?
Mhm.
Back in the day. And we
Yeah.
would have been burnt, both you and I.
Maybe that's our past life remembering. But I mean, I'm hopeful. I think maybe one thing I wanna keep listening to you is I wanna keep my optimism, which at times, I've been such a fool. In the tarot, there's a card called the Fool, and he's, you know, wandering. I just feel like I embody that. I'm not really the high priestess, but that idea of being naive and optimistic and believing in the good in people, and, being grateful, like even, in the darkest of days, and you and I have, both shared that. We've had a long friendship and supported each other through lots of things, that there can be a little bit of light and hope. And I think that's the thing I want to keep with me. I don't want to be, um, we live in it's kind of fearful out there. So I'm limiting, what I'm listening to in terms of news feeds, where I used to be a news junkie. in an effort to kind of keep that spark going until, I take my last breath, which, I hope it is many, many years from now, as I continue to make peace with who I am, love who I am, the spirit who I am, as the outer, bit of me, the human, the fleshy part ages and things are kind of maybe more creaky than they were, but just really loving that interior peace. I think maybe our youth is for loving the exterior body and just living big and large. And as we get older, it's this loving what is. And for me, keeping that spark alive so that, like you said, I'm modeling this for my daughter, working on my own stuff, keeping the light going. Yeah. Maybe that I'm just totally riffing on what it might be to be an elder, but yeah,
Oh, girl,
fully
it,
delicious crone.
it's delicious, of course. It so resonates, and the fool, like, ditto, like, totally. I think, and maybe that's the thing. Like, we're big and outward, and but we remember it, right? We have this, like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then as we get, just going inward is so magnificent and important, and
Mhm.
like, but being able to, I think you're right. Like, there is this sort of, it's really easy to get sucked under and forget almost about, I don't know, about, it's that hope, that optimism, right? It's like, it's so easy to get like, I keep wanting to, say, like, the Persephone kind of thing, where you're just like,
Uh-huh.
right. And it's like, wait a second, no, 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 no. We get the choice. We get to choose. Like, it's like, you know what? I feel like I'm being sucked down to something right now, but can I just keep that lighthouse, that light, that like, just remember the essence of the core of who you are, which is that soul, right? Which is that higher self, that being that isn't stuck in a body, in a dense physical form that's actually ageless. There's no time in that world.
Mhm.
Um, wow. Okay, we went like totally different.
Well, I have so many thoughts running through my head right now. One is this book that I'll talk about. I'll do a little video about it, but Jill Bolte Taylor's Whole Brain Living, where she talks about the left and the right brain and the where we're at now. But I had to say, when you said your son, Nahani, turned 17, that was the age when I met you. So you have a total kind of remembrance of what it is to be 17, what it is to have that, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a decision that's going to be great for me if I, know how to make a decision that's great for me. So you are, you're really at like the
The
Place Zéro of
what? What?
17.
It wasn't. I thought it wasn't 17 that we met. I
Oh
think
no, there goes
I
that
was a
story.
little older. I was a little older because I was legal.
Oh, okay.
I was legal
18.
drinking. So maybe like 20.
Oh. Oh. Oh,
But I
wow.
was really fun when I was 17 too. No, but I think
Yeah.
I was a bit crazier when I was 17. I mean,
Mhm.
to be honest, 17 was, I was talking to Nahani about this. I said, you know what? 17 is when I kind of actually lost the plot a bit, because my parents were so strict. I wasn't allowed to do anything. And I'm a free bird. I'm like just wired as a hummingbird. Like, I'm a free bird. I want to explore everything. I want to taste all the nectar in the garden from every single type of flower. Like, I want to do all the fun things and see the things I'm not supposed to see. And so that was really tough, but I found ways, because so I'd sneak out of the house and do all the things. But um, when I got older, and this goes back to when I met you, um, at Vicom, right?
Mhm.
Um, I remember, my mom had met you and she was still in that kind of fearful state. Like, I really want to protect my daughter. I don't know what this world is like. Just not having the experience that was pretty much robbed from her because
Mhm.
of the situation that she entered into in her, basically from 22 onward. And I was what she had. So she was really afraid. And I remember her being like, "Who is this Kerrie?" And it was just like, "Mom, don't worry. Kerrie's awesome. She's cool." And then eventually she started to, like warm up. And now she's like, "Oh, Kerrie." Totally different story. But I remember even being at SAIT, and when I was going to college, I was studying, and there were a lot of colleagues that I had that just did not understand why I wouldn't move out of the house. Like, why doesn't she just leave? It's like your parents are super strict. And I was like, dude, it would be so devastating for my parents if I moved. It wasn't, and I know that's so hard to understand when you don't come from that culture. But eventually I did move out of the house. I like went to university and snuck out. So basically like packed boxes and, all right, mom and dad,
To
here's
a
my
different
note.
city. You went to a different city.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
went to
met a
Montreal.
fine man.
Yes. Oh, yes. Wonderful man. I met, so I met my husband here in Calgary. We were working on a film together, and we both had the same rule that was like, don't date anyone in the film industry. Cause, and so it was like, oh, that must cancel each other out. So we, and unfortunately, or fortunately, but he was not from the community and the cast and all of the right things that needed to, that I was literally told I needed to have. I was conditioned that that's your life. Like um you have to marry this kind of person, and you will have a great life with their in-laws. And you know this whole traditional life, I was like, meant to have an arranged marriage, and I could choose, but it would still be kind of arranged. And it didn't go that way for my mom in particular, unfortunately, and it was a real devastation for her. And it was really hard. That was a hard time, but it's again one of those things where it's like I just had that. I knew that this was someone's like a path I needed to follow, and maybe it might not work out and it'll blow up in my face, but there's like some deep inner voice saying like it's that same kind of thing, right? Where like you're trying to be I can't be that thing that I'm not. It's like that. It's impossible. I mean, I could try, but it's impossible.
I
Hmm.
can't be that thing that I'm not. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you've taken that. We haven't really talked about your films, and you've made
Mhm.
some beautiful, beautiful short films. And anyway, but I think there's that you bring the lessons you've learned in your filmmaking, and I don't know if you see it that way, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's what I love about filmmaking, about film, about storytelling. I mean, film is very tricky because it's expensive and all the rest of it. But um, it became like it's a form of it's like a cathartic release, and it's also super therapeutic because you're really like you get to like tell stories about things that are going on within your own life or something that you want to process, and then you can do it in a way that's comedic, right? That kind of like you're making fun of it. um or in documentary was really great is like being able to give voice to people who were in situations like you were in or worse, and they get to share their stories, and you get to kind of like you get to like it's so amazing when you're able to empower someone who has no voice. It's like it's such a it's such a humbling experience. And so it's film is really, I love that about film because you can do that. You can like totally, give that space to somebody who, would otherwise never even be seen or heard, like people who are seen and heard are people who are quite, they know how to work the system. so to speak. Or they play a lot of the time they might be playing a particular part and they play it well or whatever. But you have like someone who, there's this. I just worked on this film called Bridging the Gap, and there's this Ethiopian mother who is like the pillar of her community here in Calgary, and she's just so amazing. She's like this superhero, and it's so amazing to be able to like put her on camera and just like even like when we do like sometimes we do little screenings and just having her there with her boys and just giving her voice. Like she's become this like amazing pillar in her community that helps other people, helps other members of the community, integrate into Canadian society. And I don't know, that like things like that are so amazing.
Yeah, that there's an audience, right? Like I don't think, and Rick Rubin says this too, you can't create, expecting an audience or for an audience or, because somehow that you're not in the true spirit of creating something. But when you make something and put it out there and it finds an audience, that's that's a little double happiness kind of. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I mean, that project was, it was a university-driven project, so it was kind of, an educational documentary. But those little ones that I've made that are more, really personal, it's like, oh, it's really lovely to just be like, oh, and having other people go, oh my gosh, I've totally had that experience before. It's like, yay, we all it's a human experience. So the story
Mhm.
really, it's a blessing to be a storyteller, and that being a writer yourself, right? Like it's a really lucky thing to be able to do, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and this is what I love about you. I'm feeling you're reminding me that yes, it's lucky because sometimes I can be very hard on myself. And I don't know, what that voice is. And I also know I am going to need to befriend that voice and understand that part of me, which is continues to be the work of getting older, of, clearing as you go, of cleaning up so that, I'm more fully present in my, as I get older. Again, God willing, I'd like to be older. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
there's that you just reminded me of the blessing piece, which is such a good place to live from, knowing that there will be waves and storms and, you know, yeah, there will be sometimes there'll be sorrow, to quote Joni Mitchell.
Sometimes there
Yeah.
will be so totally,
Mhm.
totally. It's absolutely. I mean, it's just I don't know. I think that being creativity kind of lends itself to that in a way. Like I feel I'm totally like, I was talking to you the other day about this sort of sense of like, I don't know, being slammed with this idea, this like creative insecurity. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
what? And feeling this like, and I don't know where it's come from. It's just sort of hit out of the blue. Feels like it's out of the blue. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just been like speckles throughout a
Mhm.
lifetime of maybe, words or things that random people have said, and they've just sort of launched themselves into my fascia
Mhm.
somewhere, or something like, oh yeah, you're not good enough. You don't belong here. Whatever. You're not smart enough. Self-doubt.
Mhm. I think
And
everyone yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Nina, but
oh god.
I was just gonna say, I think that is a universal story. In I haven't talked about this publicly, but I have a theory called and, excuse me, it's called the fuck up gene, that we all have it, and it expresses at different times. So, almost when there's, like, great success or you're feeling pretty you don't know when it's gonna express, but there is that doubt, self-sabotage, a little something expresses or detonates, and it takes you by surprise, and I think that is a universal story.
I would love if that's a universal story. It would make me feel so much better. It's like so much better because it has detonated in the most random times where I'm just like, what is going? Why am I? What? Like I should. I should be absolutely confident in this moment. And why am I suddenly losing my marbles?
And it doesn't matter if your friends say, "Oh my gosh, but you made this film and you did this and you had this and you have this," and list your successes. It's not happening so that you can take this external kind of, you know, reminder from the people who love you. It's, I think, happening so you can really look at the truth of who you are. Like, oh
Oh,
gosh,
I
goodness gracious, I don't think we're ever done.
I totally, we're not ever done. I don't think we're ever. I've kind of decided like that really stinks, but I don't think we're ever done. But
Mm.
it is so true. And it's not your friends, your colleague, they can say the most beautiful, loving things to you, but you yourself can know, but I think it's just, it pushes you, it forces you. And I wonder if it's kind of a thing, like a universal thing, like a, not a yes, I think it is a universal humanitarian thing. It's that same kind of deal where it's like, okay, I'm in this physical form, this body, this life, and here are all of the little things that are going to happen to you, and it's going to happen when you least expect it. And how are you going to show up for it, and will you be able to show up for it? And maybe you lose, maybe you totally curl up into a ball and fall apart, and maybe that's okay.
Mhm.
Actually, maybe you absolutely need to do that, and you need to process that, and you need to feel the grief, and you need to feel the pain. And but the knowing that you're not going to be stuck there forever.
Yes.
It's going to pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
This too
Trust.
shall pass.
Yeah. This too
Right?
shall pass.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, life is just glorious and wonderful. I mean, that we met, that we've had this rich, wonderful friendship, and yeah, yeah, and the experiences we've shared. And like,
It's
now our children know each other. I mean, it's,
totally. So,
yeah.
and it is also an interesting thing, right? Because we we've had these, I think we've had like a lot of really amazing synchronicities, and there are times where I'll be like, I need Kerrie energy. I need this like angelic fairy-esque Kerrie energy. I need to talk to her now. And I will pick up the phone, and it just, like, there's just this sort of thing that goes on. It's like a healing, I don't know what it is. It's like,
Yeah,
and I feel like we do it for each other. Like
we
there's some
do.
sort of,
And I do want to say, as we're kind of wrapping up, that when I first met you, it might have been true that I was a mentor to you early in your career. But I think as I've changed and as you have grown, you've become a mentor to me. So I seek out your energy in the same way, or maybe in the same in the same way you seek out mine. So it's not a top down and I must never be vulnerable. It's like, wow, the things you have taught me and the things we've shared together. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a pretty joyful, joyous, real, wonderful, resonant ride. Yeah, sharing my life, part of my life with you, Nina.
honor. Back
Mhm.
at you. Back at you. Oh, so beautiful. I think that, thank you. Wow.
You're so welcome. One of the things before we go that I do want to mention, I like to talk about books. So I don't know if you have, I know you're a reader. I don't know if you have a book you want to talk about or a couple of books you want to talk about, but I do like to share, you know, I do like to hear what people are reading and why.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I have a few books. So
Of
I'll share.
course.
This is like my favorite book. This is like my go-to book. So it's called The Tao Te Ching. It's kind of like a bit, it's well loved. And I do like the Stephen Mitchell translation. It's an amazing book. It was written by Lao Tzu, back in, God, am I trying to think of how, it's old.
Centuries old.
It's centuries old. It's ancient. And I will just, it's really, it's a little bit of like a guide. I find it kind of a guide in a way, of being in the Tao. So I was, like I was saying, I have a lens of a Hindu, but I went to Catholic school, and I've just always been really fascinated by different spiritual philosophies, and I just love the philosophy of the
Mhm.
Taoism. And the Tao Te Ching is, I just think they're universal teachings. And ultimately, it's this idea of just softening into the flow, like being in flow. And when things get really hard and rocky, I'm sure it's been heard of so often, but that idea of being like water, where you just be like water and flow around it or flow under it. And water always sinks. Water always goes to the very, very lowest place, and it takes form in wherever it is. So I just feel like when you're balanced, totally balanced, things become effortless. You are in flow. There isn't this like resistance. You just like, there's like, oh no, it's not resistance. It's just, oh, we'll just move through it. I don't know. And I love living in that way. So this is like one of my favorite books. And I'm like, oh, I could just open it up. Should I read a thing? Like one
Yeah.
little bit of it? How about, okay, this one, because it's short and I know we've probably been talking for like a long time now. Okay. The Tao doesn't take sides. It gives birth to both good and evil. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners. The Tao is like a bellows. It is empty yet infinitely capable. The more you use it, the more it produces. The more you talk of it, the less you understand. Hold on to the center. It's like being, big and when you're younger, and then slowly, like, the unspoken going inward is really where the true mastery is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to show you this book because it's the latest one that I've been reading. It's called The Lost Diary of Kastur, My Ba, and it's by Tushar Gandhi. So Tushar Gandhi is Mahatma Gandhi's and Kastur Gandhi's great grandson. And I met him. I was in India. I'm working on a documentary, called Gandhi's Threads, and we met. We met this wonderful, wonderful human, Tushar, who's helping us with our film. And my grandmother's name, my dad's mother's name, is Kastur, which is the same name as Gandhi's wife. And when I was growing up, like the most famous Indian person happened to be Mahatma Gandhi. Maybe he's like the most famous Indian person, really, like for sure. But the fact that I just always felt this really deep connection to him. And the fact that his wife's name was Gastor just made it like, oh, there's a synchronicity there. There's like a sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, you wouldn't hear so much about her. It was like, oh, she was, obedient and, oh, and of course there's the big film, the Gandhi, which depicts her in a particular way. But what Tushar did was he found a bunch of diaries of her with her writing. And I had always thought it was kind of like the kind of mainstream thought was that she was illiterate, that she couldn't write. She
Mm-hmm.
couldn't read or write. And he found out that like she definitely could write. And he transcribed her diaries and wrote this this book. And what was so magical about when he was telling us about this book, and just his journey, was that he realized that he himself hadn't really, you know, acknowledged or really recognized Kasturba for who she was and what her contribution was, and how, like being married to a man of such, like, it's Gandhi. It's
Mm-hmm.
he's like there's such to be sort of, maybe, I don't know if it's shadowed under him, but just to hear her story. And he told her story, and I just think it's a beautiful book. And I don't know, that's really, that ancestral piece for me is really huge. So I really appreciate this book. So if anyone's interested in Mahatma Gandhi's wife and her journey, totally check it out. It's beautiful.
I am so glad you shared that book, both books. But yeah, again, we're sort of ending on the quiet power, the quiet feminine, the power of the quiet feminine.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Anyway. All right, my friend, thank you so much for, expanding this digital space, creating a connection, for saying yes to Secret Heart. I'm just so grateful for you in my life. I learned so much from you. Thank you so much for being on the program, Nina.
Always, always, always. And I am so grateful I know you. And I'm so grateful that I was born on the same time line that you were born in. And this is us. Here, maybe I'll put this over here. It's Kismet.
The flame burns. All right, a pleasure.
Mwah. Love you, girl.
Love you, Nina. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please tell your friends.